Imagine waking up every morning to find yourself in the same bed, in the same room, in a whole other world. Sounds cool, right? But here's the kicker. Every time you die, you wake up back where you started. Now, dying once is bad enough, but dying over and over again, that's where it gets torturous. Subaru, the poor guy, goes through this ordeal every time he kicks the bucket. It's not like he gets used to it. Every death still hurts like hell, physically and mentally. Just picture it. You're living your life, trying to save people, maybe make a difference, and boom, you get stabbed, mauled, or crushed to death. Next thing you know, you're back at square one, reliving the same pain, the same mistakes, over and over again. So yeah, return by death may sound like a neat superpower at first, but trust me, it's more of a curse. It's like being stuck in a twisting, never-ending nightmare. And Subaru's the poor sap who can't wake up. Each of these deaths serve as a stark reminder of the merciless cruelty of Subaru's world, as well as the immense toll it takes on his mind, body, and spirit. Despite his resilience, Subaru's most brutal deaths, whether it's being eaten alive, literally melted to the bone, or getting stuck in a 10-second death loop, leave scars that may never heal. This is all thanks to his cursed ability, Return by Death. Return by Death activates every time Subaru dies in any way, but it won't simply revive him, but instead send him back in time, forcing him to potentially relive all his pain all over again. This ability was granted to him by a witch who will do anything in her power to protect him, even if it means killing his loved ones. Her motivations are unknown, but what we do know, without a shadow of a doubt, is that all Subaru's pain and suffering is out of an act of love. However, what if I told you that within another world, there existed another witch, one who also granted a high school boy the ability to revive himself after death. But instead of love, what if this witch did it out of annoyance and desperation? Subaru was revived simply because he was deeply loved. Kamijou Touma was revived because he possessed something special, a simple ability that can destroy the realms of science and magic, an ability that a witch will do anything to get, even if it meant subjecting our hero to billions of different hells. So, who is Kamijou Touma? What kind of pain was he subjected to, and how exactly does it surpass the suffering of Natsuki Subaru? They called you a god of pestilence. Don't you understand, Toma? Ever since you were born, you held misfortune. That's why you were called that. But do you really understand, Toma? It wasn't just the children mocking. Even fully grown adults called you that. There was no reason, there was no cause for it. Just because you held misfortune, they called you that. Since birth, Toma wasn't like the other children. He wasn't wheelchair bound or possessed any strange behavior. However, other children would avoid him all the same. And when I say ignore, I don't mean that they didn't talk to him. No, it's more like they tried everything in their power to be out of his vicinity. This didn't just apply to the children, but the adults as well. It was like Toma was a plague given human form. Why did this happen? Well, you see, Toma had a curse we all know as misfortune. It seemed that anywhere Toma would go, bad things would follow, ranging from small inconveniences to full-on accidents. Because of this, Toma was feared by everyone, believing he could transfer his misfortune onto them. In response to his presence, the children around him would aggressively bully him, physically and mentally, such as throwing rocks at him. The adults wouldn't attempt to stop it. In fact, they would encourage it. When Toma inevitably got hurt from this bullying or his misfortune, nobody felt bad for him. They would instead be disgusted or have a smile on their faces. They would openly hope that Toma would experience more pain and suffering. This all accumulated in the most traumatic event yet. Toma was chased by a man wielding a knife, who attempted to stab him to death, likely because he blamed Toma for all the bad things that happened to him in his life. A TV station that heard about the incident plastered Toma's face on a show without his consent, where they called him a cursed child and treated him like a monster. All this happened when Toma was still a child, so you can tell how traumatic an event this would be. However, there was one thing that nobody understood about Toma. He wasn't a curse to the world. He was instead a vessel for the hopes and dreams of many people. People who fear their own power and hope for a way to undo their mistakes. People who dream of returning to an old world which was buried by their ambitions. These hopes and dreams would accumulate and eventually create the Imagine Breaker, which has the power to destroy and dispel any supernatural force it comes in contact with. The Imagine Breaker has taken many forms all throughout the ages and switches hosts after an unknown period of time, eventually finding its way into the right hand of Kamijou Touma. However, the concept of the supernatural encompasses many things, such as magic, psychic powers, and blessings. The concept of luck is considered a blessing from God, which the Imagine Breaker is made to destroy. So, in a way, the Imagine Breaker is a curse, the sole reason behind Toma's misfortune and his traumatic childhood. However, the Imagine Breaker isn't magic. It's not even a scientific phenomenon. It's instead a tool, or more accurately, a reference point made to trace a path back to the pure world, a state of the universe almost completely devoid of supernatural phenomena. Think back to what the Imagine Breaker was born out of. It was materialized from the hopes and dreams of all magicians, those who hoped for a tool to undo their mistakes. The state of the world has been changed many times, whether it's through the distortion of natural laws or the degradation of the flow of time. All these accumulate and create layers of reality called the phases, each being different from the rest. There are beings called magic gods who can control the universe and create phases with a mere thought. However, they can only create and add new phases. They cannot truly destroy them or return to a specific one in time. That's why the Imagine Breaker is so important, since it can destroy the supernatural and acts as a reference point to the pure world. That means magic gods and other magicians can use it to trace a path back to an old phase that had long been buried by others. That's exactly what happened with the magic god Artemis in a certain magical index, New Testament, Volume 9. She wished to use Toma's Imagine Breaker to return her to her previous world, but that would basically require her to destroy the world Toma had come to love. So of course, the two were at odds. Artemis couldn't simply take the Imagine Breaker by force due to its nature. It had to be given up willingly. So Artemis would come up with a plan. She would torture Toma, both physically and mentally, over the span of many worlds, in the hopes to break his spirit and force him to give up the power within his right hand. Artemis will use her godlike abilities to destroy the entire universe, killing all of Toma's friends and family, all in less than a second. No living beings will be left alive. There weren't any bodies, or cells, or even atoms left behind. They were literally erased from existence. Only Toma and Artemis would exist in this world, and this would mark the start of the boys' torment. The first world Toma found himself in was pretty basic. It was a black world with nothing in it. It was devoid of light, stars, buildings, and people. Toma likely couldn't even see his own body. The only thing he could do was wander aimlessly, and that's exactly what he did. For how long? We have no clue. After all, there was no moon or even sun to help him tell the time. This world was likely designed to make Toma feel a crippling sense of loneliness. It was deathly quiet, as nothing existed to even make sound. He could only see darkness for miles and miles. The only thing that reminded him they even existed was the sensation of his feet touching the ground. It's like being launched into the vacuum of space without any stars or celestial phenomena to remind you they used to exist in the confines of reality. However, even this world wasn't enough to break Toma's spirit. Artemis would have to get more creative. Her next attempt to break Toma's spirit sent him into a world consumed by darkness. But this wasn't the same as before. There was in fact light in the form of flame, and the darkness was simply a result of a blackout. Toma was back in a real world. He was in Tokyo, but there was a chilling sense of unease he couldn't shake. One look at the TV gave him the answers he didn't know he sought.
We are forcing great hardship on the people of Japan, especially those who live in the city center. That is an undeniable fact, but we cannot end this onslaught until we have definite and undeniable proof of Kamijou Touma's death. Even those who insist on pacifism must understand deep down.
For true peace, you must slay the demon now.
It was the President of the United States. He had a very scary look on his face, and it revealed a terrifying and undeniable fact. The entire world wanted him dead. The US and other nations' ground forces were invading Japan with the sole purpose of finding him, slaughtering anyone in their path. If they saw Toma for even a split second, he would be shot on sight. The flames Toma saw earlier revealed a city partially covered in fire. They were a result of the constant bombings from the combined military might of the world. They didn't care if there were any casualties. These bombs were an attempt to kill Kamijou Touma by whatever means necessary. The city streets were in chaos, and they were covered in the mummified corpses of those who starved to death. Not only was everything being bombed, not only were soldiers marching forth and killing everyone in their path, but supply lines were also cut off. Simple necessities like food, water, and electricity were being denied to everyone. The cities were also lined with goddamn nuclear warheads to deter anyone from escaping. Toma was somehow responsible for all this unnecessary death, and he didn't even know how or why. Nobody was on his side. Even police officers who were meant to protect their fellow man were willing to burn down an entire house as an attempt to burn Toma to death. That's how badly everyone wanted him dead. On his journey, Toma would run into many people he cared about, but there was no sense of security with their presence. Just like everyone else, they would attempt to kill Toma the instant they saw him. Their bonds meant nothing, not after what Toma had supposedly done. Toma was eventually done in by his own teacher. The person who was meant to shepherd his future would be the one to end it. In his dying moments, the boy would see one last thing that would scar him: his own parents apologizing for giving birth to him and enthusiastically rallying people to kill him. They weren't sad about what their son had become. They were instead wishing for his death with determination. This was like his childhood all over again, except he no longer had a support system on his side. Arthanis would then transfer Toma into another world, which is overall more chill. In this world, Toma is replaced by another man, also named Kamijou Touma. He looked different, but he had all his friends and went through all of his experiences. Someone else is basically living his life. Our Toma is a complete stranger to even his own family. However, this world did very little to break Toma's spirit. So knowing this, Arthanis would construct her most cruel set of worlds yet. They wouldn't stop in the thousands. Instead, Arthanis intended to subject Toma to millions of different worlds, each filled with new types of pain and despair. Are you ready? Toma was accused of strange crimes he didn't commit and was hanged for his crimes. Toma was paralyzed from the neck down for an unknown period of time until the very day he died. He may have been stuck in this world for days, weeks, months, or even years. Toma was stranded on a snowy mountain with several acquaintances. Knowing Arthanis, these acquaintances may have been members of the extended cast. To prevent everyone from starving to death, Toma would distribute parts of his own flesh for them to consume. Not only would this be incredibly slow and painful, but it's incredibly depressing too. Toma was buried in humus and began to decompose slowly while he was still alive. Earth became uninhabitable and he was forced to wander an entire spaceship alone. He was crushed by a giant robot, obliterated by an asteroid. These don't even represent 0.000000000000000001% of all the pain he was subjected to. Remember, the number of worlds Toma was subjected to surpassed the thousands. So at a low ball, Toma endured 1 million different forms of torture. Some were instant, some were slow, and some would break the souls of lesser men. Each time he died in one world, he'd be revived and be immediately sent into the next, giving him no time to breathe. Think about every form of torture, every way you can die, including those humans haven't experienced, and it's likely that Toma was subjected to every single one. After what felt like an infinite number of worlds, Toma would be sent into what is arguably the most happy of them all. Here, Toma's friends, family, and even enemies are happy. They didn't undergo their traumatic experiences. Others got redeemed. It's like he was in a paradise. But it was the most painful of all the worlds so far, because it showed that Toma was never needed in these people's lives, that without him, they could all still be happy. Toma felt lost and worthless. His mere presence in this world threatened to undo everyone's happiness. So, he chose to die in order to protect this world he had no reason to fight against. But after some reflection and a bit of a push from a complete stranger, Toma would find newfound resolve and reject the happiness of this world. He intended to destroy it, to become the enemy of humanity, just like the one consumed by fire. But don't get it twisted, despite the happiness of everyone here, it was never truly real. People's lives were essentially being toyed with, all for the simple goal of destroying our protagonist. They were never truly living happy lives, because all the experiences and hardships they've been through was erased. Not because the magic god Artemis cared, but because she only saw them as a tool to further her own goals. This world was an illusion, and with his right hand, Kamijou Touma was going to destroy it. This fight, of course, wasn't easy. Toma was crushed, split in half, burned, erased, all while Artemis didn't move an inch from her spot. With each death, Toma would be revived and given another chance to fight, learning Artemis' fight patterns every single time. He'd slowly inch closer to her position. All it would take is one well-timed strike from Imagine Breaker to end this illusion. It is said that Toma was killed in this battle precisely 10,031 times, with every death being almost instant. But here's a very interesting fact about these 10,000 deaths. Every time Toma died in this battle, he wouldn't just revive a couple meters away and try again. No, when Toma died, he'd be sent all the way back to the Black World at the beginning of the story. From there, he had to re-experience every world, every gruesome death, every bit of slow torture, every bit of isolation, every inch of annihilation, all over again. Millions of worlds, millions of ways of torment, all so he could eventually get another chance at the schoolyard. Another 3 words, another chance at battling the magic god Artemis. Remember, he died 10,031 times in this particular fight, which means he had to re-experience those hells each of those times he died. So take millions of different worlds and multiply it by the 10,000 times he died in the Artemis fight, and you get 100 billion different ways Toma died in this volume. That would break any other man, and the only reason Toma endured was because of his godly determination and the fact that his brain forcefully erased or suppressed the whole in-between journey back to Artemis. And if you still don't buy what I'm saying, it's literally said in the title of the chapter. In the end, Toma both won and lost. He lost because he didn't manage to hit Artemis a single time and was split in half. This time, Artemis wouldn't revive him, but hey, at least he survived his state longer than Gojo. And with a few seconds of his life, he managed to get through to Artemis' heart, making the magic god rethink all her decisions up until then. In the end, she chose to bring back Toma's original world, instead of returning to her own. She tortured this boy for billions of years. At that point, the only true apology she could muster is giving up on all her ambitions and saving the one person she sought to destroy. I guess that's partly the reason Toma couldn't show any resentment or hatred towards her for all the pain and suffering she put him through. Toma would instead fight for her own freedom, and for the 3rd time, became the enemy of the entire world. So that's why Toma has arguably suffered more than Natsuki Subaru, and even if you were to combine all his deaths from the light novel and all the if routes, that still only hovers around 100 million deaths. Not even 1% of all Toma has endured. But hey, I'm not trying to make this a competition. Both Toma and Subaru are probably some of the most determined characters in fiction, right next to other legends like Batman and Spider-Man. They've endured more pain and suffering than anyone has any right to go through, and it's truly inspiring to see them push through all the odds. Reading ReZero and Index is like my own personal form of therapy. Both Subaru and Toma are a constant reminder to me that I can endure anything in life, that I could battle all my first world problems and come out on top. So hey, whenever you're feeling down, just think of Toma and Subaru, because just like them, there's no better feeling than being alive.